This afternoon, I am here with Dr. Amy Jo Baker, correct? And you worked on a very special assignment reviewing Texas textbooks. Give my audience a little bit of background about who you are and how you got involved with this.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, and thank you to your audience. I think this is a really timely and important topic that all parents, grandparents, and American citizens should be concerned about, and that is what type of textbooks are being used in the classrooms with children. And textbooks are used as an instructional instrument, and they have a powerful influence on students and teachers. They dictate part of the curriculum. Usually a state has some type of standards and textbooks are written, but they really dictate a great deal of how the subject is presented in the classroom. And so we were very concerned about looking at that issue. We had heard about some concerns that were expressed by parents in the states of Florida and Tennessee, and some of them were meeting with school boards to discuss concerns and issues about textbooks. And so Roy White gathered 100% volunteers from across the state and some from outside the state of Texas to look at the textbooks on a voluntary basis. And we did this from the summer of, 2013. We started looking, we went through some training. Actually, we looked at the current textbooks and did a mock review based on the current textbooks so that the volunteers would have a feel for it, so when they actually started looking at the textbooks. And we were supposed to have access to them last summer, but we were very late in getting them, and so we started off late. But these were teams of people that went through the textbooks and looked at the information to see if it was accurate, historically accurate, if there were half-truths or bias, types of information or factual errors in the textbooks. And so as we began looking at these, we started seeing some patterns. And some of the concerns that we found, that we looked at, were, for example, terms and vocabulary and concepts. For example, traditionally, since approximately the year 800, we have used BC, before Christ,
Yes.
and AD, Anno Domini, in the year of our Lord, to measure time. But the politically correct crowd has changed that to BCE, before the Common Era, and
Oh my.
we objected to that, but this is being slowly infused. And when you look at what are they basing this on, it's still, the defining issue is when Jesus Christ was born and died, but they just renamed it because they didn't want to offend people that were not Christians. And
Wow.
so that was one concern that we had. There were things like, depending on what subject, particularly world history and United States history, we were looking at the portrayal of Christianity, the portrayal of comparative religions, the portrayal of communism, how Islam was presented, the portrayal of Israel and Judaism, and the issue of how international terrorism and jihad was addressed in the textbooks. And we found some concerns, areas of concern, specifically in some of those areas. For example, in one of the textbooks, they talk about that jihad is a struggle to be a better person. And if you look at all of the scholars and the overwhelming evidence shows that jihad in the Quran refers to holy war.
Yes.
And it is, in fact, when I discussed this at the State Board of Education in Austin in November of 2014, one of the school board members who is a Muslim challenged me and said that only Allah could declare jihad. And I said, with all due respect, sir, Osama bin Laden declared jihad on the United States, which we saw those results on 9/11. And
Now, the State Board of Education has 12 members on it. Does that sound right?
Could be a few more, maybe as many as 15.
15,
I don't know
okay.
exactly how many they have, but we testified before them. Unfortunately, we were only given 3 minutes, but they could question us, and then several did, about some of these issues. And so that has become, this issue of defining jihad has become really a critical issue. And in this month in the Current magazine here in San Antonio, there's an article about Islam, and then a couple of weeks ago in the Faith magazine in the San Antonio Express, a member of CARE was talking about how the terrorists have hijacked the term jihad, and you know, that really is not the case. In fact,
So y'all are seeing a lot more interaction with CARE here in your community.
yes. In fact, there's 164 jihad verses in the Quran that list how jihad is considered, and you know, they range everything from fight in the way of Allah with those who fight with you, and kill them wherever you find them, and drive them out, and whence they drove you out, and persecution is severer than slaughter. Do not fight them at the sacred mosque until they fight with you in it, but if they do fight you, then slay them, such as the recompense of the unbelievers. There are other places where it talks about beheading, and you know, like I said, 164 references that have been documented about jihad. So that was a critical issue, but there's still people that think that it just means a struggle to be a better person. And there is, I think, one verse that refers to that, but that's certainly not the way it's being carried out by ISIS or
Yes.
others. Now, when you do raise questions like this, you're immediately told that you are Islamophobic, that you're anti-Muslim, that you're bigoted, and that is not the case. But you have to look at this from a historical perspective. For example, I consider ISIS the modern Nazis of our day. And if you look at from a World War II perspective, were all Germans Nazis? Of course not. But were most Nazis German? Yes. Are all Muslims terrorists? Of course not. But most acts of terrorism are being perpetuated by Muslims around the world. And if you look at what's happening around the world, this is a religion that is killing people that doesn't agree with them. The Nazis hijacked a country and took over Germany and led it to ruin, and the terrorists are hijacking the Muslim religion, and it just doesn't take that many and they now are in control of 9 countries, and the Middle East is in flames. It's really a clear-cut danger, and so we need to be very clear about this to let our young people know what the threat is to international terrorism.
So what, in looking at what you found in the textbooks, Was there a particular bias or viewpoint, perspective, or something that you saw a trend of when it came to discussing anything that tied in some way to the Muslim faith?
Yes, we saw that it was very benign the way the Muslim religion was presented in the textbook, and actually in some textbooks there was a great deal listed in terms of chapters about the Muslim faith, and very little to other comparative religions. And of course Christianity is is larger than the Muslim faith, and they did not have the same amount of coverage in many of the textbooks. So that was a critical concern to several of us.
Who defines what information is in the textbooks that the various publishers are producing?
Well, first of all, they usually have they have authors of textbooks, which are many times college professors, but the publishing houses themselves exert a great deal of influence. And we have found that some of Islamic groups have bought into some of the publishing companies, which may
Good point to
taint,
stress,
taint,
yes.
or influence some of that information. But I was going to give you some examples. One of the issues that we looked at was the treatment of 9/11.
A very big issue here for Americans.
Yes, and it talked about the two passenger jets slammed into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center, and about 3,000 people. The hijackers deliberately flew the plane into the buildings, and it went on to declare, that Osama bin Laden's organization was soon identified as plotters behind the attacks. And what we found was this was a partial truth and omitted critical information, because there was no identification of the terrorists as Muslims or Islamic jihadists. And there was no explanation as to why they targeted the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, or the fourth target on the ground was the White House. And no explanation is given to the political aims of Al-Qaeda. So although they did mention it, they didn't go into it the way they should have, in our opinion.
So omission of information
Yes,
distorted the true picture.
yes. And another book talked about, as I mentioned previously, we were concerned about the treatment of BC and BCE. Of course, our whole calendar is based on that concept. We feel it's very confusing to students to have two different sets of criteria. Another interesting thing was in one of the textbooks, the McGraw-Hill book that dealt with the election of 2000, and they said that they talked about the Florida dispute, and the U.S. Supreme Court ruling helped make Bush the winner and the president. Well, according to a consortium of media outlets, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, CNN, and AP, they stated that George W. Bush would have won under either legally possible recount scenario, and they said the study of disputed Florida votes finds justices did not cast the deciding vote. So,
So
they were hardly,
what a source having to use the media to correct facts. That's a rare thing. But when you find an error like that, then you present that to the publisher?
Yes, we did, and in some instances, they did make some corrections and changes, and in some they refused to. And so when we did the final report card, if we felt there was still a factual error or omission of fact or half-truth, we said that it was unacceptable unless they change that. And we presented a report card to the school districts in the state of Texas, and there were several thousand hits on our webpage, truthinTexasTextbooks.com, and I think it at least created a dialogue on some of the textbook committees and in some of the school districts as to this information, because we just wanted to make this available to parents and to teachers and to administrators in their decision-making process of textbook adoption. Now, once the textbook adoption process is over, we would like to go back and look at the textbooks to see if they made the changes they said they would, and if not,
When would that occur?
About this time, because the school districts would have already selected the textbooks, and then they would be ordered to be delivered to the schools during the summer,
Right.
so that they're available for the classroom use. But if there are errors, you can file a complaint with the Texas Education Agency and the State Board of Education, and they can be the publishers can be fined if they are found to have errors in the textbooks, because they should have had them cleaned up by now. Another concern was that in one of the textbooks they said that this was young people in Cuba received many benefits from the communist government, including free education and health care. This education system extends from preschool programs to college to graduate programs. However, young people, like all Cubans, live in a police state that limits their economic and political freedoms. Well, this is one of the most repressive countries in the world, and what they didn't explain, that there's a two-tier healthcare system. They have one healthcare system which is open to the communists and to the tourists, and then they have a substandard healthcare system that their people have been subjected to. John Stossel did an expose on this on an ABC News program when he was there, and it was quite shocking. And then in terms of the free education, they did not mention that they have a program called the Communist Pioneers, and the students were instructed to spy upon their parents and tell them if they said anything that was politically incorrect, and some parents ended up in prison or jail for questioning some of the communist government. So I certainly do not think that they had benefits under the communist system. So that was one thing that we were concerned about. And there was other things.
I understand overall you found about 1,500 errors in the number of, but how many books did y'all review altogether?
There were just over 30 books that we looked at. We looked at, focused on 6th grade world culture, 7th grade Texas history, 8th grade U.S. history from the beginning, which deals with pre-Columbian through the Reconstruction. We looked at 9th grade world geography, 10th grade world history, 11th grade U.S. history, 12th grade government, and 12th grade economics.
Wow.
With an emphasis on free enterprise. But there was just even little innuendos, like with the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe. They failed to mention the work of Ronald Reagan and his contributing factor and promoting with the Pope the fall of the Soviet Union. And when I went to Eastern Europe a couple of years ago, I mean, even in Budapest, Hungary, they have a statue in honor of Ronald Reagan for his contribution to the collapse of communism in that country. So it's interesting to see that they recognize his role, but some of our textbooks do not.
What type of things, did you find things out of our history that while when we were being educated and in school were there that are no longer there, things that they have kind of omitted from the history being taught about our country?
Well, I'm just right off the bat, one of the things that bothered me in the Texas history textbook was that they left out "under God" out of the Texas Pledge of Allegiance in one of the textbooks. And when we questioned them about this, they said they were going by the original one that was, but our response to that was that the Texas legislature, it's a law to have "under God" in the Texas Pledge. That's what they say in the classroom, and if they're presenting something different in the textbook, it's very confusing to students. So that was, all they had to do was change 2 words, put "under God" in there, and we would have found it acceptable, but they didn't. At least at that point they had not, so I don't know if they have. So that was another concern. And I think some of the people that question us about, these were like, some were retired teachers, there were some who were parents and grandparents or just concerned citizens, some former veterans.
Some mixed demographics made up this
yes.
committee that was reviewing.
Yes.
Your credentials, you're Dr. Amy Jo Baker, your doctorate is in?
In educational administration, educational leadership. My background is I have a double major in history and political science from Trinity University, and I was a classroom teacher, high school, taught United States history, Texas history, American government, advanced social studies problems, and then I was in federal programs in the San Antonio Independent School District, and then was in curriculum and instruction and became the director of social studies, was in charge of the program. And during that time, I wrote 3 very highly competitive Teaching American History grants and had the privilege and opportunity to take teachers around the United States to historic sites.
Wow.
To see where some of these events took place. For example, we studied the American Revolution and the War of 1812. We went to Boston. We went to the Freedom Trail. We went to the USS Constitution. We went to the Old North Church. We went to, the next year, we studied the Civil War. We went to Antietam, where the bloodiest battle, one-day loss of life, took place. We went to Washington, D.C. To see Ford's Theater and the Lincoln Cottage. We went to the White House of the Confederacy in Richmond, and then we went to the Civil War Museum in Petersburg, outstanding museum. The next year we studied World War I and II. We went to Kansas City, and we went to the National World War I Museum, and then we went to the Eisenhower and Truman Presidential Libraries because of Eisenhower leading the D-Day invasion and Truman's decision to drop the atomic bomb. The following year we took a trip, we studied the Cold War and went to the Presidential Library of Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan in Los Angeles, California. And then the last year of the grant, we studied the international war on terrorism, and we went to New York to 9/11. And we had speakers there about that. And one of the interesting speakers that talked to us was Catherine Heritage from Fox News. And she wrote a book about the next wave will be homegrown terrorists. And then, of course, after that was the Boston situation and
Yes.
other events that have taken place. It's like she had a crystal ball and was predicting this. So we're very concerned about what's happening, and we want our students to be prepared with knowledge is powerful. So that's a little bit about what we've done in the textbook adoption process. We did get some, I would say, opposition from the Texas Freedom Network, for example. One of the early issues that came up, and it really was not a non-issue, but they were complaining that there was too much in the textbooks about religion's influence on U.S. history. And in particular, they had a concern about Moses and why he should not be in the text or the textbooks. And of course, our response was that the founding fathers felt that Israel and Moses had and the Ten Commandments had an important impact on the history of our country. And in fact, in the Supreme Court of the United States, they have Moses and the Ten Commandments in their so of course he had an influence.
Yes.
Absolutely. But anyway, the state board didn't go for that. They kept that reference in the textbooks.
With the dynamics of the mix of people on the State Board of Education currently, where we are, Marty Rowley is our representative that is on the state board. Did you find overall that they were supportive of the work you did, or was there more pushback from those that spoke out?
Well, it was a mixture. I think several of the conservatives were very appreciative of what we did because they tend to support more traditional American history, which, by the way, when Congress passed the Teaching American History grant by both houses of Congress, it was to teach, quote, traditional American history, unquote. And they funded the program for several years, and we were able to get these grants, for example, to have these seminars about United States history. So it was very troubling, and I'm going on to a different topic now, apples and oranges, because the textbook adoption impacts Texas. And incidentally, there are several states that are interested in what we have done here in Texas. And some of them wanted to have been in contact with Roy, wanted to get information about the process and what we did so that they could replicate that in other states. And in fact,
Texas kind of sets the standard, doesn't it, for textbooks predominantly across the nation?
It does. Texas is the largest statewide adoption, and has influenced textbook adoptions because in the past there were some specific numbers of books, and then the school district selected them. But those rules have been changed now, and even though there's an official or recommended list, school districts can buy books off of that list for some that were not recommended. So we went ahead and tried to review some of those that were not recommended as well, so that they could see the situation on that. But we've been invited to speak to at a conference to discuss the textbook adoption, and some other states will be there. The other issue that we were concerned about that some of us addressed was the advanced placement U.S. history. Many parents have a concern about Common Core, and
Yes.
the person that was involved with Common Core is working with the Advanced Placement Program, and the U.S. history curriculum was changed so that some of the outstanding teachers who were AP teachers started expressing concerns, and it started trickling out, and there were hearings that parents were very concerned. For example, we have just now finished the 70th anniversary of World War II, the most pivotal event in the 20th century, where around the world, millions of people died. The only thing that they had in the World War II, they did not have anything about D-Day or Eisenhower or about the Holocaust.
How do you
Or-
talk about World War II and
The
not
only-
mention?
The only thing that they had in there to teach about World War II was the treatment of Japanese in internment camps. And
Wow.
that was the only thing. Of course, I, along with other people, testified that that was a slap in the face to our veterans. And the State Board of Education did tell the AP that they wanted instructed the teachers that they would teach the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. But we're very concerned that at a national level that this is going to be a detriment to the students in the Advanced Placement U.S. History course. Now, for the first time in the history of AP, there was so much criticism that they decided that they would get input from people and that they would make some revisions. They decided they would put in the Holocaust, that they would put in some of these things, but again, we're waiting to see what happens.
Why do you believe there is such a desire to rewrite true history?
Well, unfortunately, I believe that America is one of the greatest countries in the history of the world. It's my understanding that there are only 2 countries that had a covenant with God, our compact.
Okay, say that again. I was restarting. You were saying that it was Israel and
The United States,
through the what compact?
the Mayflower Compact, that they dedicated, that they would have a civil body politic to advance a Christian religion, and they brought freedom of religion. It's been a struggle in this country, but
So the basis has a religious root to it as to why they're wanting to rewrite. Because when you mentioned certain things that they were leaving out about World War II, well, the Holocaust predominantly was the imprisonment of Jews, though there were Christians and others, but predominantly it was the annihilation of Jews.
correct.
And that, therefore, is a religious situation. So are you seeing a trend of removing any connections with religion out of history when most wars are fought over religious things?
Yes, there is a definite move away from that and the more secularization of this country. I think that there's a misunderstanding about in the Constitution, in the First Amendment, which is one of the things that the United States is respected for around the world. It talks about freedom of religion, not freedom from religion.
So well said,
And
yes.
so that is a very critical aspect, and so there has been a pushback. But if you go back and read some of the founding documents and read about the lives of our founding fathers, it comes through crystal clear that one of the reasons this country has prospered and has been successful and a beacon of liberty and freedom is because of that foundation, the moral
They
precepts.
founded it for religious freedom, which for them was to be able to worship their God from a Christian.
Right. And does
perspective.
that mean that the United States has not made mistakes in the past? Of course not. There have been mistakes that have made. Of course, one of the most serious is the slavery issue. But the United States has fought a civil war. We have the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments that freed the slaves, that made the slaves citizens, and gave blacks the right to vote. We had the 1964 Civil Rights Act. We had the Voting Rights Act. So there have been efforts to improve that. Where there have been, we try to overcome any problems. I think one of the measures of the success of a country is how many people want to come
Oh, yes. Oh,
And
yes,
so
no question.
People are knocking down their doors to come here.
And you don't see Americans trying to go elsewhere.
Right. It's you know, the greatest, the Constitution and Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence are some of the greatest freedom documents in the history of the world. And if you look at the Declaration of Independence, there are so many references to God, to providence, and so on. So we do have a concern at the AP level, and then I wanted to share with your audience another concern,
Okay.
and that is the concern about freedom of expression in the classroom. We had an incident recently in the Houston area where an excellent advanced placement teacher was asked by one of his students, why is ISIS killing Christians? And so he gave a lesson about Islamic terrorism. Well, in his class was a Muslim student, and the student went home and must have complained or expressed concerns to the family, and the next thing they know, CARE was calling the school district, condemning the teacher for what he said was the truth. And the teacher ended up resigning, and there was an uproar about it because he was highly regarded as a teacher. And many of us were very concerned about this, so we independently looked at the teacher's lesson plan and found references to collaborate. What he had said was absolutely 100% correct. And so this sends a chilling message to teachers across the state that if you talk about the threat of jihadism or about the threat of international terrorism, that you could have your livelihood threatened, or you could be condemned by CARE. And so
how do we address that concern? What do we need to do?
well, first of all, knowledge. Knowledge is power. And I don't think, see, I too was ignorant. I did not understand at first. I thought that CARE was a benign civil rights group for Muslims. And in fact, I asked, our school district was invited, and I organized initially for us to participate in a project to teach about the Muslim religion at the University of Texas in Austin, and the Aga Khan had worked with Governor Perry to set this up. And what I've since found out is that CARE and the chairman emeritus Omar Akbad and their chairman Nihad Awad was named unindicted co-conspirators in the Holy Land Foundation terrorism financing trial in Dallas, Texas. And the Holy Land Foundation defendants were found guilty on 108 counts that they were tied to Hamas. And handing down this lengthy sentence to each defendant, they said the district judge said that the purpose of creating the Holy Land Foundation was a fundraising arm of Hamas. And CARE, it was revealed in the wiretaps, as having been active participants in the early Hamas terrorist-related organizational meetings in the United States. So as a result of this, the Federal Bureau of Investigation has cut all ties with CARE and expressed mounting concerns over the Muslims advocacy group's roots in Hamas, a terrorist support network. And the United States Congress sent a letter to other congressional representatives to think twice about meeting with CARE. Further, the United Arab Emirates designated CARE and the Muslim American Society as terrorist groups. That took place in November 2014. So why, my question is, why is a group with terrorist ties to Hamas and named a terrorist organization by foreign governments and by a United States court as unindicted co-conspirators with 300 other groups, why are they allowed to influence public policy in United States and Texas schools?
Very good question.
So,
And the answer is?
that we need to be informed and know what's going on, and when they raise that question, they shouldn't even be talking to these people.
No.
They should not. So, so the Muslim Brotherhood has hundreds of front groups in the West, and they're successfully presenting themselves as moderates while they're shutting down any criticism of Islamicism. And
So going back to, don't lose your thought there, but basically with what you were talking about earlier in the textbooks, you were finding things having to do with a religious origin being omitted, and a lot of them would reference back, of course, to the Muslims, to jihad, to ISIS, to any of these things, especially that we're dealing with today. So does it feel like on your part that the Muslim, maybe Muslim Brotherhood, the CARE, these other organizations and groups that are around are slowly infiltrating the various departments? You said there was, somebody on the State Board of Education.
well, I'm not saying that he is.
No,
I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that he said that only Allah could call for jihad, and my response to that was that Osama bin Laden certainly did call for jihad, and others, and ISIS has, and even the
Correct.
Iran and other countries have said that as well. But I have some copies to show you of this letter from Congress, Beware of CARE, signed by some, and then here is a copy of the
So I know I've heard several times that there's been incidences here in San Antonio where CARE has stepped in and caused something to be shut down or diverted or changed. Is this a regular, ongoing thing that you're seeing in San Antonio?
well, it seems like that's happening because they certainly have advocacy. They've been in several editorial articles in the San Antonio Express newspaper, and when Mr. Roy White wanted to write a rebuttal, they wouldn't print what he had to say as a rebuttal. So to me that's very one-sided, and it's not getting the true picture out. I think we need to have a debate about this public policy issue.
Sounds like it. Now, you were speaking of something and I interrupted you a moment ago.
Well, I was just very concerned about this teacher who was
Dismissed.
from Foster High School at Richmond, Texas. He was not dismissed, but he resigned.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking of the one in Houston.
Yeah, well, he resigned because he said that he knew that there would be a lot of controversy and television cameras up there, and he didn't want to disrupt his students' learning. But some of us felt like he should have fought the good fight because he was right.
Yes.
So that is a concern about what's going on. Now, millions of dollars have been poured into colleges and universities to set up Middle Eastern studies or Islamic studies, and quite frankly, a lot of people are concerned about the freedom of speech being squashed. For example, and I can't recall the name of the woman, but she wrote about the treatment of women under Sharia law.
Yes.
And she had written a book, and she was invited to some college campuses, but some of these groups did not want her to speak, and so she was disinvited to come. And so that, again, is another chilling example of how some of the people who advocate this, that say it's against the Muslim religion, don't want the truth to come out, because it is a fact that under Sharia law, women are treated in a substandard manner. For example,
Their property, their chattel.
yeah, for example, under Sharia law, if a woman says she was raped, she has to have 4 male witnesses. Under Sharia law, if a woman wants to get a divorce, the male gets custody of the children. A man can say that he wants to divorce a woman, but it's just under Sharia law, well, we saw under extreme examples of homosexuals being thrown off of rooftops. Yes. There is a bill, the American Law for American Courts, before the Texas legislature, but this CARE group here in San Antonio went up to testify against it, and it looks like some trial lawyers have said that it wasn't needed, but several states already have passed it, so it's not looking real good right now.
Yeah, I think they're taking a vote or something on it tomorrow, I received.
Yes, and so I think that we've already seen a number of cases. There was just one about a week ago where a young girl, his family was trying to force her to marry an older man, and she refused. She was kidnapped and held in a hotel or motel and was assaulted, and criminal charges are being filed against this person. But clearly this Sharia law is incompatible with the United States Constitution.
Totally. As a teacher for the number of years, your experience in that field, with textbooks, especially the history and the economics and government and all these type of textbooks being altered from what truly is the way the story was, with all the different sides and facts included, how do you see that impacting this generation when they're getting a distorted version?
Well, I think one of the greatest tragedies when the atheist Madalyn Murray O'Hair prevailed in Congress, the Supreme Court rather, and prayer in school was outlawed. And I can think back to when I was growing up in school, it was, we did have prayer in school, and until that was outlawed, and look what's happened to our schools since then. There's been a breakdown in morality and civic discourse. There's a lot of rampant discipline problems, because when you have a biblical reference, there's a morality or ethics or codes of conduct,
Yes.
That are emphasized, and with the secularization, where anything goes, everything has gone. So there's really been a breakdown, and with the breakdown of the family, the school was one place where they could get character education or to get some type of
discipline, structure.
Yes, exactly. And so and in many cases that's not happening. Now there are pockets of excellence in this country where a lot of our students have teachers, but many of them are coming under attack if they do, and so this is a real concern.
How do we change things? What do you suggest? If somebody listening to this says, I'm in total agreement with you, how do I change things? What can I do? What would you tell them what to do?
One of my favorite sayings, I am only one, but I'm still one. I cannot do everything, but I can do something, and I should not fail to do that something I can do. So I think that parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and concerned citizens need to be involved in understanding what's going on in their schools. You know, a lot of people don't even know who their school board members are, or
Right.
don't know anything about the election. I think they need to be concerned about that, and when they need to have a dialogue with the school about you know, what is taught or not taught. I think when parents show up and express a concern, then there's a lot of people who listen.
Now, I understand on your website, the Truth in Texas Textbooks.com, that there's a list of books that y'all reviewed and either gave it acceptable, good, or unacceptable. Of course, we're going into summer now, but it won't be long, and fall will be here, and the kids will be bringing home their textbooks. What should a parent do if they see that their child's bringing home a textbook that didn't get a favorable rating?
Well, I think they might express a concern to the school, and parents are a child's first teacher, and I think it's important, if you feel that there are gaps in your child's education, to certainly teach them at home. And the other places, the churches and synagogues, to also look into that area. And then there's a number of good books available that talk about some of those pivotal events in our history, and have the students read those.
Where can they find those type of books?
Well, I know that there are lists of those types of books. I know, for example, Rush Limbaugh's been writing some time travel books that have been extremely popular, and he won an award for his Takeoff on Paul Revere book. And there are other books that I think they could research and find that's appropriate for the students. Some of the Caldecott books are
What books?
Caldecott. Some of those are some of the winners of some of the best children's books. So I think we need to supplement perhaps some of the information, and then of course just read and be vigilant, and learn about these things so that we're not victims, that we're knowledgeable.
Right. Any last thoughts that you'd like to share?
I'd just like to thank you very much for inviting me to be a part of your program, and I just would like to thank the parents for the wonderful job that they do, and I think that we owe a great deal of debt to this country, to the people who've contributed and have given their lives on the
It happens
altar
to
of
be
freedom.
Memorial Day today, so
Exactly.
an appropriate day to remember them as well. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been a wealth of information, and once again, if they want more information on the work y'all did, it is truthintexastextbooks.com, correct?
Yes.
All right, very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.